To start, I drained all the coolant out to keep things nice and clean. Now, if you haven't already done this, I would recommend you watch my split cooling modification video because this would be a really good time to do that. You'll also want to go watch my video on removing the front bumper. I'll have both these videos linked in the description below. Now with the bumper off, let's check the diagram to see what's actually happening. So we've gone from the factory circuit to the one with the split cooling. Now we're going to be adding that extra heat exchanger, and it's pretty simple with some short hose connections. Now we need to make a little bit of room, so we have to cut these two zip ties and remove the plastic retainer tabs on the driver and passenger side so we can free up these plastic air shields. Next, we cut the plastic here on the driver's side to allow some extra flexibility for the next step. Then we unbolt the engine oil cooler, and this is where we're going to move it off to the side. And you want to make sure that you have a bucket nearby just to give it something to rest on. Next, we want to remove the plastic air cover. Now, be careful, releasing the plastic tabs here is a little bit brittle, and it's a good time to clean it out with a detailing bristle brush to get out any debris from the road. Very important though, you want to make sure to reinstall the plastic air cover after you've cleaned it all out. Now we need to make some cuts in the plastic air pieces here. This is going to help accommodate the large heat exchanger that we're trying to install. Then there's these two support brackets on the front that need to be removed, otherwise the heat exchanger will not fit. There's also this small metal piece, and you actually need to cut this off, otherwise the oil cooler is not going to fit when we try to reinstall it. You'll also need to remove the mounting hardware from the engine oil cooler, which we're going to save for later. At this point, we want to remove the air cover under panel, and we're going to actually need to modify it later for everything to fit and still get good airflow. So as we saved earlier, we're going to repurpose this oil cooler mounting hardware to allow for us to attach it here. You also want to rest the oil cooler with this metal piece hooking onto the metal plate here. And when I put it all in, it was fairly secure, so you also want to add those zip ties to where we cut them off earlier. Next, it's time to drill out our bar to mount that new heat exchanger, and you really don't want to rush this. You want to make sure to test fit it and make sure it's perfect fitment. Just before we install that heat exchanger, I added some extra mounting hardware for the oil cooler, and then I just used a zip tie to temporarily keep the piping from moving all around. Now finally we can get the new heat exchanger ready to bolt in, and again you want to make sure that everything's fitting flush. And I'm gonna warn you, it's a very tight fit, but the oil cooler should fit in perfectly with the plastic shielding, and the main thing is to have it as tight and secure as possible. And that just leaves us with the last bit, which is attaching the hoses. Now we want to remove the return from the factory heat exchanger to the pump and just have it go straight into the new heat exchanger. And to do that, I used a 3/4 inch 90-degree hose, two of them, with a straight connector in the middle to route from the old factory heat exchanger to the new one. And instead of reusing any old hoses, I cut a new one that returns from the new heat exchanger to the pump. Then I just hot wired the pump and added a temporary bleed hose back into the split cooling reservoir just to burp out any air in the system. And again, much like the split cooling install, there will still be a little bit of air in the system when you put it all back together, and it's going to be spluttering and spattering all over the place for about 2 weeks. And finally, there is the under Aero cover panel for the front, and it is a very tight fit since the oil cooler sits a lot lower now, but it is possible to reinstall. Just remember to extend the vent cutouts rearward about 3 to 4 inches, and with mine I couldn't reinstall 2 of the screws in the middle, and I did have to use some rivets to connect it to the front bumper edge. So safe to say at some point I am going to make a custom panel, but for now it does work. And there's still plenty more SL content coming soon, so make sure to subscribe and I will catch you in the next one.